Hello and welcome to It's Not for Nothing, a podcast on untangling the mess of grief, faith, trauma, and hope after the death of a child. We are three Catholic mothers carrying the extraordinary cross of child loss. If you too are grieving a child, we want to provide a safe place for you to come just as you are, while sharing the encouragement that our God is on the move in the wasteland of your grief. You and your suffering are both precious to Him. It's not for nothing. We're so glad you're here. Hi, Redbird families. It's Elizabeth. Please excuse the disruption to our usual format today. I needed to leave immediately for a minor family emergency in the middle of the recording, but we didn't want to lose the beautiful conversation we'd begun. Thank you to Brittany and our newest Redbird team member, Jessica Wilfore, for carrying on, and to my daughter Maggie for showing up at my house to end the recording. All is well, and we pray this conversation blesses you. Hello, and welcome back to episode 32 of It's Not for Nothing. We're here to talk about broken bonds, helping our living children grieve after the death of a sibling. I'm Elizabeth Leon. I'm the Director of Family Support with Redbird Ministries, and I'm so happy to be here with my friends and colleagues. We have Brittany Primeaux here with us today again. We also have Jessica Wilfore. She's our new child life specialist here at Redbird. It's going to really launch and get off the ground in the next few months. So I'm so happy to be here with you both. How are you, ladies?
Thank you for asking. It's currently approaching Mardi Gras season in South Louisiana, which is hilarious. I went on a little field trip yesterday with my son, and they were telling us all about how it's like rooted in Catholicism. And I was like, oh, okay, sure. If that's what we want to like tell people. And a lovely excuse to get together and everybody enjoys a party. Beads get thrown at us. It injures our faces most of the days. Drink not water, but then it's all fine because the next day is Ash Wednesday. And then that makes people feel better, I think. It's very interesting to be from a place that, like, I don't particularly love Mardi Gras, but I go because my babies love Mardi Gras and they catch stuffed animals and all of those things. That's our season of
Yeah. It does feel like the wrong spirit of Lent to party to excess right before, but that's okay.
The day before.
Yeah, Louisiana does it really well.
I mean, we don't fail at it, that's for sure.
And you have been posting for people to buy their king cakes on social media for weeks now. So
I love me a king cake. I almost went get one today because I ran out. I don't have any more. I need a king cake.
Well, and Jessica, this is the first time, and I know not the last, that we have you on the podcast. So maybe you could introduce yourself a little bit, tell people where you are in the world and kind of how you ended up here with us today.
So I am in Iowa, Northwest Iowa, really rural, on a farm. And I found Redbird shortly after losing my son, Hudson, who we lost him at 3 in 2023, the summer of 2023. And I found Redbird 2 months after through the Hollow app, actually. And I'm so grateful that I found it so quickly. Listening to you beautiful ladies and just meeting with other moms has been pivotal and like the biggest thing in my grieving journey. But aside from Hudson, our oldest, we also have Eleanor and Leo, who Eleanor is 2, Leo is 7, well, will be 7 months in a few days. And then, so that's like family. I'm married. Wonderful husband named Ethan. And then I'm a child life specialist. I've been a child life specialist since 2013. And I've had the opportunity to work in children's hospitals, in community settings, teach online. So I've kind of done it all in that field. After losing Hudson, I did work a little bit more in the hospital setting, which was a lot different to work with patients and families who are experiencing death after you've experienced it yourself. And that kind of brought the conversation to Redbird with you, Elizabeth and Kelly, of just feeling on my heart, wanting to volunteer a little bit, but also not feeling quite ready because it's only been 20 months since we lost Hudson, but I don't know that I'll ever be ready. And just how helpful Redbird has been to me. I hope to be that to someone else and just help us all navigate this ugly road that none of us are ready for ever. So
beautifully said. Yeah, Jessica was really helpful also in putting together our sibling pages on our website. If you go to our Redbird website, we do have a tab that comes down under family support that is support for siblings, broken bonds. And there's lots of different information there. But we also wanted to bring the conversation to the podcast, just another vehicle. And we're going to start today by talking a little bit about the experience of our living children after their sibling died, because each one of us had one or many children that were alive at the time that our child died. And we want to address many of the areas of grief that we've not spoken specifically about before for children, and the best way to care for living children after the death of a child. I want to introduce our scripture, and it might feel like kind of a strange one. It's from Joel chapter 2, verse 25. And this is a verse that someone brought to me during the years of my divorce about 15 years ago. I will repay you double what the swarming locust has eaten. And it's a funny scripture, I suppose, but it really speaks to me that in our suffering, the Lord is not indifferent. He's not off the job. And what our living children have lost through our grief, through their grief, through the entire bomb shattering change in their family, the Lord is going to repay. And not just restore, but restore double. And we don't know what that's going to look like. And we might not really understand it till we get to heaven, but we still can claim that it's true. So, Brittany and Jessica, we want to start by having, all of us share a little bit about the dynamic of caring for your living kids when you're also grieving, but when you need to figure out what is most helpful for them in their grief.
I do love that Bible verse. I don't know if I'm sure I've heard it, but to use it applied in this space is just so beautiful. And once again, truthful, whenever our brains are able to really process it in that same manner. So we lost Leo in 2017. Our son Max had just turned 4, and our daughter Evie was like 2.5. And it was the hardest thing next to losing him. I always say that, losing a child is the hardest thing you'll ever be asked to do as a parent, but then having to still be a parent after that, woof, extraordinarily hard. And I remember when we told the kids, it was the actual envisioning or personification of what lamenting I feel like would be. Max was literally wailing in a way that I've never seen or heard since. He almost immediately got it. And Evie, although she was 2, wasn't really talking a lot yet. At that age, she just really couldn't. So I feel like it was such a specific torture because she was looking at Max, trying to understand what we were saying, but then couldn't quite literally verbalize what's going on. What are we talking about? So it was almost like she was a prisoner in her own mind. And it was just absolutely heart-wrenching and took a really long time, and that's what I love on that part of our Redbird page, is that it breaks it down by age. And now looking back, it's like, man, I really wish I would have had that resource, because within Max's age bracket, we had to say it over and over again. I'll never forget, we had gotten in the car one day and the spot where his car seat was gone, was gone. And Max, I could just look at him in the rearview mirror and I could just tell, that something was on his spirit. And I said, baby, what's wrong? And he just said, Mama, how many children do you have?
Aww.
And I said, well, Mommy has 3 children.
Yeah.
And he looked over in the spot that Leo used to be. And he said, but there's only 2 in the car.
Aww.
And I said, yeah, baby, there's only 2 in the car. So really helping him understand that we still count him. He's still part of our family. But he's not with us in that way anymore. And it's even interesting. That has even transpired, and now we say he is, you know, like whenever we're leaving, we'll always do a roll call. By God's mercy, we now have 5 living children. So every time we're in the car, we'll do a roll call. And is mommy in the car? Mommy's in the car. Is Max in the car? Max is in the car. And they always leave like our deceased family members for last. And they'll say, is Leo in the car? And they all answer, Leo's in the car, you know, to where it's like they really feel his presence in that way. And I just think that it's really beautiful.
Yeah, I never even thought about the car seats. That really impacted me. Thank you for saying that. I can see how that's just have to take the car seat out on top of everything else. We never bought a car seat, but I can imagine that of having to take it out. Jessica, maybe you can walk us through a little bit of what your experience was.
Yeah, that is like knife to the heart. Like that's we always, so Eleanor was 7 months and she hated the car, and so we actually had her car seat right next to Hudson's because that was the only way she wouldn't cry, was if she could see if her passy fell out, he would put it back in. And so there was so much change for her even at 7 months. And I think that when they're an infant, it's so overlooked. Even like what I was taught as a child life specialist of, oh, they don't really understand, and they, you know, they can sense change and whatever. But I mean, I will go back and say, like, I mean, I stayed home with them. They were never apart. They were always together. And so we lost them. She had sleep disruptions. Like, she used to be sleeping through the night and now she wasn't. She was very aware that he was not here anymore. And even her demeanor. And I think a lot of that's not just Hudson's absence, but now what she was having, like her parents, how we were struck. She really lost who her parents were. And so, yeah, that was incredibly difficult. We ended up moving. We were in Montana at the time when Hudson passed, and we moved to Iowa while we just kind of figured out what we wanted to do. Did we want to stay in Montana? Did we want to move closer to family in Iowa? And so we stayed with my parents for a while because I feel like we really just needed a lot of help caring for Eleanor in those first months. The only escape from the pain is at night when you get to sleep. And so now when month old who is now waking in the night, I mean, you wake up and you have, and I remember Elizabeth, you saying this, I think in a podcast once, when you wake up and you have like a moment where it doesn't yet, the reality is real. And so I remember just like, I would finally fall asleep and then I'd wake up because I'd hear her crying. And for a second, I thought everything was fine. And then it just washes over you. Nighttime was just such a wreck for us. So to have the help from my mom was really great, to just let Ethan and I sleep through the pain. Yeah, that was probably the hardest, was like the late night wakings. Also the fear of how will she remember him. And we've kind of navigated through that a little bit. And now that she's 2.5, she talks about him all the time. Even yesterday, best friend, she instantly, Hudson. And yeah, and so we talk about him a lot. We pray to him every night. We have lots of pictures of the two of them up. Yeah, that's the hard thing when they're so little. You're like, oh, she's not gonna really remember those memories, but I want her to. You know, I don't want to believe that she's not going to, and so I'm just gonna keep playing videos and showing her the pictures and hope that it sticks. And he's just always been a presence in her life, even being gone.
You know, we had the experience of anticipating John Paul's death. So there's a place where I think that combined with the fact that he was a half sibling for all of our other living children, I think I just like convinced myself that like, nobody really wanted us to have a baby anyway, so it probably won't affect him that much. Like just all this nonsense. And then after he died, I was so focused on helping our youngest daughter. She was 10 at the time. She was there when he passed, like right with us. And then our next oldest child was 12, that it took me years to realize I had absolutely no idea how our other children walked through that. You know, I had a 15-year-old, a 17-year-old, two 19-year-olds. Like I have no idea. And I've said that to them. They will say like, yeah, mom, you were pretty out of it. So there's a place where as parents, we can offer ourselves a lot of grace, that like it's never too late. Like you can't ruin this part of your kid's life, right? The death has already happened. Like you're not going to make it worse by not navigating it perfectly. And we're here to sort of share not just our experience, but Jessica's also going to share some things that hopefully can be helpful, some tools and strategies. But, if you hear this podcast and you think, I didn't do any of that, like you can always circle back. Like that's the beauty of our relationships with our children. We can always go back and say, I realize I didn't do this for you, or I wasn't there, or can we talk about it, or what do you need? I'm wondering, as we reflect on this area, what was most helpful to you personally, or, for sure, professionally in supporting your living children?
I think the help of my family and friends just to come and give us that break that we needed. It's so difficult to parent when you're grieving and all you do is cry. And you do wonder, am I scarring my child? All they see me do is cry and I'm just not with it. So just having those breaks so I could take that break, I could sob, I could scream, and then I could kind of come back a little refreshed to be with Eleanor. And then professionally, I mean, honestly, Redbird was, again, I found it so quickly. I just remember thinking, I've worked with so many families who have lost a child, but professionally, like, I don't stay in touch with them. And so after losing Hudson, I was like, I need to meet a mom who has lost a child and can tell, like, they've survived this, because right now it doesn't feel survivable. And so to meet not just one, but a community of, I'm able to do this because they can do it. And Brittany, even you, I remember in the Lenten journal, you telling me, so just like a year ago, I remember you saying, I'm going to get teary eyed already, gosh, about finding light again in the land of the living. And I was like, I don't think I'll ever find it. And I remember, I think you will. And I'm finding it more. But just, again, to have, like, no other mom could tell me that if they didn't lose a child. It's like for you to, like, your light wasn't taken from you. But to have heard you say that, it plays in my head a lot in really dark moments. So again, Redbird's just it's been huge, like from the podcast to the Lenten thing to the net, everything.
Beautiful. What about you, Brittany?
There were a few things, that we kind of put into place in our life afterwards that were very helpful. And some of it was really just trial and error. I will say, like, the biggest thing that still plays such a significant role today is just our village of people, that just kind of come around. And I'm so grateful because I do have a very incredible family, but it's very small. I just have one sister, but I have a multitude of people that will check in on me and make sure that we're doing okay and ask about our kids, and like it just feels like family. And that started with the loss of Leo, and it has not subsided in years. So I'm so grateful for that. In the way of like other things that just helped at first, whenever I would feel like overcome with emotion, I would remove myself from our children. And one of my beautiful village dwellers told me I needed to stop doing it. She said, Brittany, they need to see you cry. And I was like, no, I don't want them to see me cry because then they'll get sad, And she's like, right, but they're already sad. They're already sad. So when they see you remove yourself, it's almost like you're ashamed of your emotions. So then they're going to be ashamed of their emotions. And so they need to see how you navigate it. So it was one of those things where it was like, I would intentionally bring up Leo. I would intentionally say his name so that they could talk about him and feel like it was a safe and okay place and time to do so. But even if they brought him up first and it would make me cry, like I would just stay in the moment and I would just let them see me cry. And then they would see me laugh, like a few minutes later, so that they could see kind of the movement of that emotion. So it was really hard, to like balance my own emotions and our children's. And then we were pregnant when we lost Leo and didn't know. So it was pregnancy, hormones, grief, work, vocation of mother, of wife, plus carrying everything for our kids. So my metric was, if I was crying so hard that I needed to blow my nose, that's when I left. So like I set that up. I sat and I thought about it very intentionally. Like they don't need to see me sobbing.
Yeah.
If I can't pull it together, I tell him I love him. I need to go outside. And then that's just what I do.
Yeah, that was kind of my thing too. Like if I was sobbing and losing it, I tried not to do it in front of Eleanor, even though sometimes you just can't help it, and I think that's okay. But I mean, I remember like 15 months, if I would start crying, but she would just come and like give us a hug. Like she really just picked up on. I hope she just, because of this, becomes like such a sweet, nurturing, empathetic little girl, like she seems to be. And then now that she talks really well and she's 2, if she sees me crying, she's just like, Mommy misses Huddy. And I say, yeah, Mommy misses Huddy. And it's just like an okay thing. Like we're okay to cry. We're okay to say, I'm crying because I miss Hudson. And she knows that.
Well, and it's so beautiful, and this ties into the next section, was just like how we speak to even children who we have been blessed with after, our children have passed away. So even with precious Leo, I know he's just like a little bitty baby, but I know that you'll talk to him about Hudson, and we do the same. And it's just one of those things where I feel like it's such an honor to kind of carry that responsibility of introducing them to this person that they haven't quite met yet, but like will absolutely be waiting for them in their eternity. We always talk to the 3 children we had after Leo passed away are Annie, Ellie Mae, and Josephine. And having them know Leo, even just in picture form, or we had little quilts made with his clothes. So like each of those girls have quilts. So they'll like find a piece on their quilt of his clothes and they'll like run to go find a picture of it, almost like a sweet little scavenger hunt. It's the cutest thing. So we just kind of talk about that, and we talk about when we're having a difficult day, like we do have the opportunity to pray to him and to ask him to help us if we're at school and we're feeling a certain way, or Annie is now starting to take tests. And if she feels nervous on a test, she talks about that, and she'll say that she's asking Leo to help her. Or we always have the little tie in with the lions. So one day her spelling word was lion and she just wrote Leo. And I was like, you're going to get it marked wrong. Like that's, you got to spell it right. So it's just really adorable, like to see their little brains form with all of it. It's an honor, I feel like, that we get to pass on their names to our
Yeah.
living children, and the ones that come afterwards for sure.
Yeah. We love our Leo lion from Redford.
Oh,
Eleanor has it in her room. She'll sleep with it. She won't let Leo touch it because it's hers. She got it for being Hudson's sister. Yeah, it is an honor to make sure that they know him and remember him. And then it's so sad to think that they won't have pictures together and memories and all that. And I know even just getting pregnant, I mean, yeah, the pregnancy hormones, because we got pregnant 5 months after losing Hudson so quickly. And yeah, that was difficult. And I had a lot of fears with having another baby. Like, am I going to, like, what kind of mom will I be? Am I going to just be maybe angry at this baby because it's not Hudson? And if Hudson was still here, he probably wouldn't be here. And, just all those emotions of like, what's it going to be like when baby gets here? But I had a dream before we even knew that Leo was going to be a boy. I had a dream of Hudson. I do think it was God given, just felt very precious and real to me, of Hudson introducing me to a little boy. And I just knew in my dream that that was his brother. And then they went out to a playground together and I just stood and watched. And we didn't even know if we were having a boy or a girl. And so then when we went to the ultrasound and found out it was a boy, it felt like permission to love this baby. Like God and Hudson knew that I was already struggling. Like, will I love this baby? What will it feel like? And just that dream of saying like, hey mom, this is my brother and it's okay to love him. Like I want you to, I love him, was what I needed. So like in the hospital with Leo was one of the calmest days we ever had. Like it just felt like his presence was there. Like we had his baby there and yeah, it was just a very calm day. I thought it would probably be a storm day.
praise God.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things where I feel like the anticipation is always insurmountably worse
Yeah.
than like when it happens, you know? So like you having to literally live in this space of 9 months of the wonderment and what is it going to feel like? I remember you sharing like, what if he looks like him? And it was like, oh, sweet Jesus, like let that just be such a balm to our spirit. Like I carried you in prayer so much because I was just, oh, I just was worried. Like if I'm just so honest. And I just remember like just praying and begging God and begging Hudson, you know, to like intercede and to calm all of that for your spirit.
Last Friday was Hudson's what should be fifth birthday. And
Mm.
it was a hard day, but the day before was even harder. Just like leading to it. Like I was like, it's gonna be bad, it's gonna be bad. And it is, you know, it's always a hard day, but not as bad as the days leading up to it.
And I know, you know, I know that our faith teaches us that like it will carry us through those moments, but just being a physical human, it feels impossible to
Yeah.
celebrate his birthday without him. You know, and it's one of those things where I think about it in the way of we're women in our 30s. 30s.
Yep.
Okay. So praise God. I'm 39 and I'm holding on by the skin of my teeth. So I'm in my 30s. But we're women in our 30s trying to battle and understand what's happening. And then you think about our sweet, precious babies and like what's going on in their brains. And I know that that's why, like, you being a part of the Redbird team is just going to be so absolutely vital.
Yeah. I hope that my experience as a child specialist can help our family, paired with losing a child as well, because there are things of how I used to be a child specialist and things I'm kind of like, I don't know if I would say that, or it's also very different of the Thessalonians of the others because we grieve with hope. I've read a lot of things, and even in school, you're kind of like, oh, don't put religion too much on it. You don't know where they're at, and you know, be concrete with what death is. Whereas, like with Eleanor, because we grieve with hope, like we talk about Hudson being in heaven, and so it's nice with Redbird that I can incorporate all of that. That like we lean on that, like we know our children are in heaven, and we can tell our children that. But just some things that I have written down to hopefully help some of our community is children grieve differently, like developmentally. One big thing I think parents are always fearful of is how their children are grieving because they take it in doses. Like 1 minute they're happy and playing, and the next minute they're sad and they're happy and playing, and that's totally normal. They're not like us where we can really stay in our sad place for a long time. So when you see your kids playing and being happy, that's normal. It doesn't mean that they aren't sad and they don't miss their brother or sister. It's just very normal. A couple of things using concrete language like the words death, dying, dead, died, which are hard. So I always say, like, if you're not ready to like say those words because it's so hard for you to even get there, that's okay. It's taken me a long time to even say that to Ella. She knows that he's not here. She doesn't fully understand what death means. So we just talk about how he's not here and he's in heaven and one day we'll go to heaven. So again, leaning on our what we know to be true about being with them again in eternity. But again, so common for them to be playing and sad all over the place, being irritable, being concerned with their well-being, like concerned if they're going to die, if mom's going to die, also very normal, and giving them reassurance that you're safe, you're here, mom's taking care of you, or whatever. Just try and give them that reassurance. Acting out at school, totally normal and expected. Playing death games, I think that's another thing that parents, and even Eleanor has started doing that. Kids will kind of play out death or say, oh, now I died. And that can be hard for parents to hear. Again, very, very normal. Regressing for little kids, like if they were potty trained and now they start wetting the bed or wetting themselves, just any regression is really normal. Increasingly relying on you for things, teens being rebellious. I guess to know that if your child's acting normal, that's okay. If they're acting really abnormal, that's okay. Like I think there's just so many highs and lows, just like we experience, and kids are no different. They're just going to be all over the place, and that is okay. A few things I would just say is again, leaning on heaven and what we know to be true there. just being extra supportive to them. They might need extra hugs, again, that extra clinginess, just to be more present, try and keep a routine, offering like creative, expressive outlets through art, different activities. And that's one thing on the website. I know we have a couple listed. There'll be more to come. And that's something I'll talk with parents if I have calls with them of depending on where their child is developmentally, what would be a good expressive therapeutic activity for them that's grief specific. Because just allowing them to have the opportunity to play is huge. How they're going to understand the death, how they're going to cope with the death, is doing it through play, which is just a little different for us as parents. So, but they need that. They need that outlet to understand things and cope.
Well, and to just be their age, right? Like it's so hard. Losing a child in adulthood is impossible. So then to try to figure out the loss of a sibling when they're just babies themselves just seems impossible to get done. That was where so much of my joy was found in those early days of like literally just sitting on my back patio, like watching them play and
Yeah.
have fun. And like right now, you're not thinking about your brother that passed away. Like you're just catching bubbles. You know,
Yes.
you're just being a kid. I knew that that's what they needed, and I didn't know that it's what I needed, but I did. This is kind of the final part of the podcast where we share our knots of what we are hanging on to, how our grief is showing up. So I think that my knot that I'm holding on to is we get a little bit of extra time with our kiddos this weekend, which I'm very excited about. I don't know if this is in grief or if this was potentially always in who I am, and then grief just exploded it. But I don't love large crowds of people. I don't love Mardi Gras. But my stinking babies love it. So it's one of those things where it's like, okay, we're just going to go to the parade and I'm going to trust Jesus that everything's going to be okay and no one's going to get hurt and everything's going to be happy. And then we're just going to come home and go to sleep. So making memories, you know, even begrudgingly. So I feel like that's the knot that I'm holding on to.
Yeah. For me, I would just have to say the knot that I'm holding on to right now with just being a week out from Hudson's 5th birthday is just the constant reflection that I will only have so many birthdays without him, but I will have eternity with him. Like I constantly just have to keep turning my focus to eternity, and this is not forever. This is just for now, as painful as it is. You know, we got through one more birthday. That's a relief, because now we're a birthday closer to being with him again. So just holding on to that.
You remind me so much. My friend Brittany lost her son, Chase, when he was 3. And I text messaged her like around his birthday. And I just said, hey, babe, I love you. I can't believe it's been so long since you've held sweet Chase. You inspire me to carry my cross better. I love you, sweet friend. And like this mom, right, who's like, it's her son's birthday, replies back with, don't be silly. It's 6 years closer, not further.
Yeah.
Chase was in my present, but now he is in my future. Every day is just another check off to the countdown.
That's 100% how I feel every day.
He was like, oh my gosh, I'm not that. I have not gotten to that place yet. And I don't know. I don't know what it is that's part of my journey, but it's just not how I feel yet.
Yeah.
But it's so beautiful that that's what's on your heart because it's absolutely true. Closer to heaven. Earth is not our eternity. You know, like this isn't where we were meant to reside. Like we're just passing through essentially.
Kristen Jack from Redbird that I met,
Mm-hmm.
she sent the nicest card on Hudson's birthday, and it was addressed to me, Hudson Wilfore, and just like to see your son's name, you know, or to hear someone speak it, and it was a card that she wrote to him, and I'm just like,
Oh,
but again, just like that connection that I've had through Redbird is just, yeah, like only a mom who has lost a child would know what that meant, because no one else, you know, a lot of people said happy heavenly birthday to Hudson, and that's great, but to physically send a card for me to see his name in the
birthday card.
cue the tears, thank you, Kristen.
Well, thank y'all so much. And thank you again, Jessica, for joining us. Our sweet Elizabeth had to kind of step out kind of urgently, but hopefully she'll come back and add her notes and thoughts as we wrap up. As always, God bless you. God bless each and every one of you on your journey, wherever this message finds you. And we'll always be here. Thank God for Redbird. Thanks again, Jessica, for joining us. We're so grateful.
Bye, ladies. Thank you so much for joining us today. For more information on Redbird Ministries, visit www.redbird.love. That's LOVE. Or join our free virtual community on the Redbird app. Hope to see you there.